Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the very first Walt Disney animated feature film to be set as Walt Disney's very first animated feature film in 1937. This movie, based on the Brothers Grimm, as you can already imagine. Somehow Disney actually had an attempt to actually do Alice in Wonderland as his first movie, but it decided Snow White was being so much of a better idea. And you know, this was actually one of the first feature films from Disney I ever saw as a kid, right next to The Lion King, Pinocchio, Peter Pan, The Jungle Book, Robin Hood, and the Aristocats. If anyone has actually seen this movie during the 90s, or at least when it was out on VHS and DVD before there was Disney Plus, then you're already familiar with the story of Snow White, and you kind of already know how the original Snow White story actually goes. It's about Snow White's stepmother, the evil queen, who comes pretty awfully jealous when Snow White becomes the fairest one of all because all she cares about is her beauty and her looks. So she actually sends a huntsman to take Snow White into the forest and actually kill her, but he couldn't bring himself to do it and orders Snow White to run away because she could never go back to the castle because the queen wanted her dead. Comes across a little furry creature that actually bring her to a cottage that actually belonged to 7 little men. She actually comes to their place and actually cleans up so much to them, thinking they'll let her stay so much because she needs a place to be, otherwise she would be dead in the forest. And the 7 little dwarfs allow Snow White to stay there since they're actually so much working in the mines so much and they're always busy. And you guys know how the story goes with Snow White, as if anyone has not even known the story of Snow White already. But the way Disney actually did it, I'm not going to say it's 100% perfect, but I'm saying it's a very, very great start for the Disney industry and the company to actually grow. Disney threw almost everything away to try to make this film work, and it was worth it. So it is considered one of my top 10 favorite Disney animated feature films from the studio because, honestly, like I said before, I really enjoyed the character Snow White herself, and I really loved this character when I was a little boy. And I still love her from this day, especially when I can't wait to meet her in Disney World. Yeah, I never got the chance to meet any of the Disney princesses because I had so much other stuff going on, especially when all my sisters got to meet them. However, when I was watching this as a teenager before becoming an adult, I kind of noticed that somehow this film, I was kind of really wrong about it because I felt like I downgraded this movie. Like, it felt like it wasn't too much an interesting movie for me. Like, I had so much other interesting movies going on, like Peter Pan, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and maybe a bit with Robin Hood. But over time, I come to love this movie, especially the character Snow White herself, especially when I enjoy so much the scenes with the 7 dwarfs. Sleepy, Sneezy, Bashful, Dopey, Happy, Grumpy, and Doc. Oh yeah, I still remember all those dwarves' names from this day. And trust me, there was no reason for them to make a live-action remake on this movie, because the moment I knew the trailer, the moment I knew Disney was gonna fuck up. I love how the story is a bit smooth and how the way it kind of runs at a pace of its own. Especially when we actually go back to the evil queen when she realized that Snow White isn't dead and she takes matters into her own hand and tries to kill Snow White using a poisoned apple. Although there's no climactic battle, but there is a climatic chase with the dwarves actually chasing the evil queen disguised as an old hag, and yet she comes close of crushing them with a boulder, but honestly actually getting struck by lightning on the platform herself as the boulder actually falls down and crushes her. I mean, this is one of the most gruesome deaths I kind of witnessed. No music, no pleasant backdrop, no dialogue, just the sound of thunder. Kind of gives a chill moment. And even though I wasn't there during the time when this actually happened, but what I actually heard so much is that after the movie was done, there were people coming out of the theater crying. I guess either the fact that they didn't read the book Snow White or somehow they read the book but actually seen it a little bit how different Disney made it, especially about the ending about when they thought Snow White was dead. And not only that Walt Disney actually had 50 different kind of names for the dwarves. I would actually give you the entire list of it, but honestly, it's going to take forever for me to actually tell you all their names about what they were going to go with. But I like their names just the way they are. Would have been too crazy if there were actually a Snow White movie that actually had the dwarves' names Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and Saturday. And for today's standards with Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, it is mostly considered an actual great masterpiece of Disney involving story and characters, vibrant art, and memorable songs. This one actually set the animation standard for decades to come. And I would most definitely listen to some of the songs if I was going off to work singing Hi Ho, which is considered my favorite song. Hi ho, hi ho, hi ho. Plus, it's the only good song I can actually memorize a lot, since I've been listening to it growing up. And for years to come, if it ever comes back in theaters during 2037, I would likely love to see this on the big screen. And I would do the same for Pinocchio, but I'll save that for another time to talk about. Disney knew then the more timeless you can make something, the longer it will be around. So logically, it makes sense to start off with a fairy tale. And as the very first film goes, it's really much damn impressive. And I mean very impressive. And I'm really much impressed with the character Snow White herself, but her voice is a little bit Betty Boop-ish. But the funny thing is, the voice actress who did Snow White was going to be considered to play Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, but a clip of her voice was actually heard during the song when the Tin Man actually sang If He Only Had a Heart.
Above a voice sings low. Wherefore art thou, Romeo?
And I think I might be overanalyzing on this, but are the dwarfs even related? Are they brothers? Are they cousins? Somehow it doesn't seem like it actually addresses that. But somewhat I can just buy it. I'll just go with it. But somewhat, these characters along with Snow White do have more development than the prince character himself. He only gets like a few lines and so, and then he appears at the beginning, he appears at the end. It kind of almost seems like it's like Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, but I'll tackle those when I actually reach those films. And I can just say on the upside that I can actually enjoy the artistry about how bright and how colorful it is, even with some of the dark, scary moments, even though it's not so much of a dark movie, but there's a lot of creepy stuff that kind of makes it feel ballsy. But does Snow White hold up as a film, even if you emotionally disconnected the fact when you saw it when you were a child? Well, let me just say it's emotionally. Much like The Wizard of Oz or even Where the Wild Things Are, this is a film that is entirely fueled on emotion. Logic changed a little part in it. And honestly, I find films like very fascinating. So it's pretty much a film that actually gives you what you want your emotions to see. Sometimes when the prince actually comes and kisses Snow White and drives her off into the sunset, but how did he actually manage to find her? I mean, these two didn't have so much of a conversation so much throughout, and I think the prince was actually supposed to have more time in the film, but unfortunately they had to do so much timing, and I don't know. But that's not what your emotions want to see. They want to see the happiest of the happiest ending after the saddest and darkest moments. Yeah, don't think that this scene actually messed me and my brother up. This scene actually ripped us both to shreds, especially me, because anytime when a family member of mine dies or passes away, I usually play the music from this movie, and it just hurts me in so many different ways, especially with how the organ music is playing. How much more depressing can anyone get? Especially when it comes to the dwarves all sobbing, even the stubbornest one. They are just bawling over the one woman that actually ever came to their lives and actually cared for them. And they loved her. But something about this film does actually do something for us and kids emotionally to connect with things that we weren't used to often connecting with. Even if the film is not complex, engaging, but it does have a great emotional simplicity. And I would be so emotionally grateful to actually watch this movie over the live action remake one. At least this one actually has more emotion you can actually connect with, like I mentioned before. So for those who are just new to Disney, and if you actually want to get into the Disney sphere like most of us are, even my group on Messenger, then you might as well start with Snow White first before you even go into any other Disney animated feature film, so you actually know what you're getting yourselves into. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a classic masterpiece that actually does emotional and knows artistry so much that Disney began with. And I would still consider Snow White the fairest of them all.